Hello, everybody. Welcome to the podcast. It's my blurred opinion. All right, no more singing. All right, guys, we are back here again. I know. You're saying, what's wrong with the voice? Because you just got done being sick. Technically not sick. Allergies are really kicking my ass today, so I don't know what happened. Woke up and just my allergies have really taken over. So we're here in upstate Pennsylvania, and it's just been a battle with the pollen. But nonetheless, we are gonna power through this, and we're gonna get through. We're gonna get to our two guests. I did say two. It's a mom and daughter pairing, and I found them again on Podmatch. Really was excited to reach out to Mom, and she wanted to acquiesce me in doing this episode, and I'm very, very proud to now know them and be able to help share their story, because them combined, really, they're a really good duo who are trying to do some really good things here, and I love when like family comes together, and the support, especially as a person with a disability and all the things I went through with my mother and all the things she went through with me. It's really nice to see parents being so supportive of their kids, no matter what the limitation or what they're going through, because you just don't know what you're going to have to sacrifice, right? You think it's kind of like a marriage when you say, to death do us part, but you don't know what that entails until something actually arises and you go, oh, do I still want to be here for this? And obviously the good parents stick around and they don't give up on their kids, but there are some who have, unfortunately, too many probably, and we've shared some of those stories, but it's just good to see the support that they both have for each other, even because I know that's like an underrated quality in with people with disabilities. No matter how severe it is, a lot of times the people who love us most and that are surrounding us, we give them and we instill them with qualities, whether we're intending to or not, and it makes their lives better, and it makes them more empathetic, and they have more of a love for life, because they know how much our lives are a struggle. Anyway, very long intro. But yeah, you girls want to introduce yourself, you can go Mom to Schuyler, or it doesn't matter.
Woohoo! Yeah. So, hi everybody. I'm Meridith. I am the mom in the dynamic duo here, and it's hard to know where to start other than a lot of accomplishments in my life, but to me, the most epic of them all has always been my kids. I've been a single mom the majority of my life, what some people would call a mompreneur. So that meant that I was pretty much wearing just about every hat and then some. At one point, that meant putting 40,000 miles on my car every single year while trying to run my business. And my life was pretty much a chase throughout the time when I was raising the kids, because I was always trying to be super mom, and I felt that the more that I chased, the more that I failed. And yet, finally had gotten to the place where all three kids just seemed to be doing fabulously, including Schuyler, who had just graduated from Yale and was actually on a fellowship in South America. And I was right in the middle of a busy afternoon at work, getting ready to, write some contracts and taking a breath, thinking, oh my gosh, I did it. Now I can figure out who the frick I am after all of this. And then the phone rang, and I got that call that I suspect that most of us who are parents or who love someone have kind of hoped we never experienced. We've looked at other people who've been in this kind of challenge and thought, oh my God, I don't know how they do it. I hope I never have to figure that out. And suddenly that other person was me. Schuyler's friend got on the phone, and really from the moment I think I heard her inhale when I picked up the phone, I knew that my life was about to change. And she blurted out that there had been a terrible accident in Colombia, South America, that Schuyler had been crushed by a boulder. She didn't know where they were. They had found a hospital thanks to the tour guides on this river rafting adventure they'd been on, that actually had an ICU. And when I asked if Sky was going to make it, her response was simply, there are 3 doctors who are working on you, on Schuyler. You just need to get down here as soon as you can. And that began probably one of the most profound chapters of my life, that I know we'll share more about. But what the upside here, though, is that it made me realize many, many things that I had not realized at that point in my life. And one of them was that a lot of the other boulders in my life that had been figurative, that had preceded this, had ironically also been a gift to me, because they'd made me quest for how do people face things that are insurmountable and emerge as bigger, bolder versions of themselves. So today, years later, a little more than 8 years later, it has led to me profoundly giving back and I do a lot of coaching, a lot of speaking. And I like to say that this has opened the door for me going into the business of helping people come more alive.
Yeah.
And in the process, having an amazing relationship with the epic Schuyler.
The epic Schuyler. Schuyler,
yeah. Okay.
You want to introduce yourself, sweetie?
Yeah, I'm Schuyler Arakawa. I don't know how much you want me to tell, but I had just graduated from Yale. I was doing a fellowship in Peru, and we took a vacation to Colombia. And the day before we were gonna leave, we were water rafting, and we stopped to swim in a grotto. Okay. And the boulder fell on my head and crushed my skull, my lungs, my scapula, my spine, and my right eye, and my left ankle. And so the damage to my brain messed up the cerebellum, which controls the balance. So I am in a wheelchair for now.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. So do you have a traumatic brain injury from it, I'm assuming?
Correct. Sorry, I didn't say that.
No, it's okay. It might have been a dumb question because you said you smashed your skulls, but I just wanted to make sure.
No, I'm not. But yes, that is the thing that affects my balance.
Right. But I think what makes you so special, or at least one thing as I get to know you here, is the fact that, I mean, she was telling jokes and stuff earlier. She has a very, it's partially a dark sense of humor, and which I do fully understand myself. And but like through all that, like you could say I smashed my skull and then like 5 seconds later be laughing, and that's like, that is a trait that it means you've really moved on and you've kind of learned to love yourself and appreciate life. And again, you're evolving because you're still.
Thank you.
Yeah, and because you're. I mean, I'm sure you know, like we all do, we struggle and we look at what our life could have been without all this. But you're still smiling, you're still having a good time and telling jokes.
Yeah.
And so you.
I know some people are negative, but it feels like being negative would only hurt me. So I don't see any reason to be negative. So I just kind of am positive and take it like that.
Yeah, exactly. As far as like
you may also find it kind of ironic and quirky that her middle name literally means happiness in Japanese. It's sudden.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, then, yeah, you're destined to be. You're destined to just be like a little giggle puss. All right, I like it.
Yep.
I like it. As far as mom goes, like, what is that like? So, like, with my mom, again, I know I've told the story 1,000 times, but I'll tell you. I had a disease called Steven-Johnson syndrome. It's a high allergic reaction to medication. I went in for an ear infection to the ER. They gave me amoxicillin, and little by little, my skin started melting, and hair, teeth, and
That's crazy.
I know, and the cornea damage. And then they gave me another medication. I was allergic to that, and so on and so on. And short version here, but I was very close to dying. Obviously, I've recovered, other than some cornea damage. But my mom was there for all that, and she witnessed it, and she spent the 4.5 months in a hospital 3.5 hours away, and she's watching her son nearly pass away, and in and out, and but through all that, I still managed to fight and keep going, and I've had her on, and she's told her version of it, of just how chilling it is to watch something that you love dearly, because she has 2 kids, but at that time she had none other than me, or she had 1, I should say. But she, because when you're your own thing, you're your own individual. It's like, okay, I don't have to. It's the one good thing about being lonely is like you really only have to worry about yourself. But when you have a child, where it's like you want to protect them at all times, but in this instance, same with your daughter. You can't. You're like helpless, and even more so in your case than mine, because at least my mom was in the area. She's in another country. So what is that like for you, beyond just the fact that your daughter's in bad shape, but like you're getting information from other people, but you're like helpless. You can't just like fly to another country just like this second. So what's like? Take us into the mind of where you were at that point.
Yeah. So you bring up some really powerful points and some really powerful, memories. So first of all, I cannot emphatically enough say that even when your instinct is to curl up in a ball and shut yourself off from the rest of the world, one of the unbeknownst to me, smartest things that I did was realize immediately when I heard this. First of all, I didn't even speak Spanish. I knew nothing about Colombia. And so therefore, that meant that my ability to help my daughter was even less. And so what I did was this tiny little post, which is ironically enough the beginning of our book, The Sky is the Limit. I put this tiny little post out on Facebook that basically said, I just got a call that my youngest daughter has been seriously injured in Colombia, South America. If anyone has any experience with this, please reach out. And, regardless of what anyone thinks about Facebook, in that moment, our phones started blowing up with people who either had relatives in Colombia or who had some sort of connection. So that helped to start the wheels flowing for us. Now, that said, I was definitely, it was almost like I split into 2 parts. There was one who was in total denial, like this cannot be happening. And I am totally, why did Schuyler end up with me? I'm not wealthy enough to handle this, because I was being told basically they were going to try and keep her alive long enough for me to come down and at least say a final goodbye. They're going back thousands of years. When you can see a patient's brain, they do not survive. And I've seen the photo. I mean, you could definitely see her brain in the injury. And so it was being told by quote unquote experts that this was unsurvivable. And there were 2 or 3 other injuries that she had sustained that were also typically unsurvivable. So many people were being told to prepare that I was going to go down and find that I was picking up the body of a child, which of course was horrendous. So what ended up happening is we had a couple of angels who actually gifted me and my other daughter flights down to Colombia. My son stayed here. And what I discovered, ironically, was that it became a gift that I had to spend hours and hours in transit to get to her. We were turned away by American Airlines at the Tampa airport because we were arriving 45 minutes before our flight, even though we had no checked luggage. They said it was against policy, and the fact that Schuyler potentially was dying was not their problem, quote unquote. So we drove to Miami. My son drove us. We hopped on the plane there. We flew to Bogota. Then we had a layover. We flew to this town in Colombia, which I have a lot of difficulty pronouncing, called Bucaramanga or something like that. And then we still had a 4-hour drive to get to little Socorro, South America. Yeah. Are you still here?
Yeah, I'm here. Yep.
Oh, good.
Sometimes, I'll tell you, sometimes I mute the mic because I'm all mucusy. So I'm just like, if I cough or sneeze, it's going to be, you won't hear it.
Perfect.
So I promise I'm listening.
Perfect. Oh, perfect. I just wanted to make sure I didn't see it on our phone. But anyway, one of the most profound gifts that I got was being required to spend time alone with me and, God universe, right? Because what I realized, to your point, was that of all the terrible emotions that I was feeling, and I was feeling just about every terrible emotion that you can imagine, the worst by far was feeling powerless to help Schuyler. And so that was when I realized that was unacceptable, because if I agreed to that relationship with this boulder, in other words, I had zero power to help her, then that meant that I also became a victim to this boulder. And so it was taking out not one member of our family, but two members of our family, which of course would have impacted my other kids. And so what I realized is I had to go back to those prior boulders in my life, and I had to say, what have I learned, and how much power am I going to give this boulder, and what can I control? I definitely cannot go back in time and make this boulder not happen. I definitely can't get in the operating room and have any sort of impact. But what I can control is this crazy thing that supposedly works, which is called the inner game. And the inner game is always the differentiating factor. When I go back and I look at these miracle stories throughout time, people who have done things that we look at and we say, my God, that was impossible. How did they manage to do it? It always starts in the inner game. And people have been claiming this for thousands of years, that our minds are capable of triggering results and triggering just the energy that we put out, the frequency that we put out. And it sounds freaking woo-woo until you're in that moment when you have no other options. And it's not just about yourself. It's, to your point, it's about your freaking child. So I got to the moment where I did not care what the rest of the world thought of me. Yes, I realized there was a possibility that if I leaned into the inner game the way I was about to, that some people in the world would think that I was crazy, that I was a delusional mom. And poor Schuyler, how the heck did she get someone who is as woo-woo and airy-fairy as this woman? But for me, all evidence pointed to that possibility. So I started, by realizing that my mind had to believe it was possible. I had to be the first person who believed that, wait a minute, it's not just possible, it's probable. And that came from becoming what I now call the sovereign of our own minds. What I realized is that most of us go through most of our lives allowing our thoughts to basically think us. We believe that our thoughts are us. They're not. They're just, most of us do what I call flabby thinking. And that's when we allow the world outside of us to dictate what we think and therefore how we feel. And we spend so much time looking for this perfection in our experience, something that's going to be so perfect that we can't help but react in a way that feels perfect. And that just is never going to happen. I mean, you show me two people in identical circumstances, and I will show you two different reactions or responses. And so what I really think one of the greatest gifts from the previous boulders in my life was to realize that if I had a shot of playing this game to help my daughter at all, that I had to do something differently. So I leaned into playing the inner game like I had never played it before. And so I arrived actually finally at that hospital in Socorro ready to say game on. And so we started seeing things that were textbook impossible almost right from the get-go. We had so many quote unquote coincidences and synergistic moments that ultimately we were able to fly her to Miami. I moved to Miami, to your point, like your mom. I moved to Miami for 4 months while she was in the ICU. I was with her constantly. I did everything that I possibly could to play this inner game, to stay in this inner game. I was not trying to look on the bright side. I don't believe in trying to look on the bright side, because I believe that when you do that, you're actually focused on the big looming dark side. You just don't want to see it, and that feeds the dark side. Yeah. It was a powerful transformation for me and self-discovery for me that ended up really actually flowing into the entire ICU, which was interesting. But it allowed me to show up and infuse a level of strength and fortitude into Sky, into the people around the world who were cheering for Sky, into our doctors. And it taught me just how much power and potential our own minds can have when in combination with things like, the level of medical care that she had was phenomenal. And yet there was a moment when the doctors walked in to her room when we first met them, which they later shared, believing that if this wasn't the most complicated case they'd ever seen, it was one of the top three. When they opened up her skull to do the procedure in Miami, they said it looked like cornflakes in there, and it was just quote unquote impossible. And yet, to be able to remind them of who they were became a tipping point that allowed them, I think, to perform at their most optimal level. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. No, and I think, there's always been talks about how, like, when a mother finds her daughter or kid underneath a car, they can lift it. Like,
yep.
And you just kind of go into like battle mode. And there's a time where I think you go through phases. And again, I can only speak from the child's perspective, but I think when you're in just such danger, or someone you love is in danger, you kind of just go on autopilot in some way, and you see the end goal, and you're like, I just need to get her out of this hospital. Whatever happens from here, I'm going to take care of her, love her, regardless of whether she could speak, talk, think, whatever. I just want to get my daughter to the best place possible. And then when we get her home, I'm going to bawl my eyes out. I'm going to punch pillows. I'm going to do all these things. And maybe you do it within spurts, you know, when she's not around because you don't want to see her see you weak or what people perceive to be weak. And so, but at some point, you're going to hit a roadblock and you are just going to end up just losing it. And I think that's the same way in the reversal with people with disabilities. A lot of times, we don't really deal with our disability, especially when, I mean, if you're born with it, you're born with it. That's different. But it's something like in her case or in my case, you tend to go, okay, this is what this is. And then when you know, mine was when I was a child. So I learned that I was different pretty early on. And that's hard to swallow because you want to be like everybody else. And then you look at the situation, you go, oh, okay, so now I need to deal with what this is. Oh, and then because you go through a phase where then you just become numb to it, and then somewhere out, then you cry and you get frustrated with it, and then hopefully on the other end of it, you'll be like, okay, this isn't so bad. I like this. This is, it could be better, but maybe I can tap into this and make this something more, and I can use my disability as a superpower and help other people or what have you. Yeah, no, it makes lots of sense. And then for Schuyler, like, do you remember a lot of this, or is this all? Go ahead.
No,
No,
I don't remember the entire day of the accident, and then I was in a medically induced coma. So all I remember, I don't remember any of the time in Colombia.
Yeah.
I only remember waking up and squeezing. My mouth was wired shut, and my ears were taped shut, so I couldn't talk. So I squeezed my mom's hand, once for yes and two for no. And that was the first thing I remember.
Right. Yeah. I was a very heavily medicated person, so there's stuff that's in and out for me as well, but when you have major brain trauma, I figured you didn't. Maybe it's a good thing that you don't.
Agreed.
Yeah.
I didn't dream until very recently. I stopped dreaming right after the accident for a while.
Yeah.
And now I just started dreaming again.
Oh, wow, that's interesting.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, another thing I was what I didn't add to what your mom was saying is like I said, you go through a phase now where you start to grieve, if you will, like your body. And you're like, you know, oh man, I lost my eyes. It's like you lost a person. Like for you, all the damage that you suffered and, you know, this altering change to your life one way or another, you still have to live with it. But you have to grieve it first. You have to go, man, like I went through something so traumatic, and now what next? Like, do I want to live? Don't I want to live? And then obviously you find purposes in life, whether it's goals and fantasies and dreams that you have, or, you know, let's just say your dogs or your mom, your brother, your sister, you know, you find things to grasp onto. And then
I think I'm in that stage now where I need to think long term.
Yeah.
So at first I was just getting day by day. Now I need to think long term. So I'm trying to change my mindset to do that.
Yeah. And I'd actually like you to both to answer this question, but we'll start with Schuyler. Like, what have you, through all this 8-year ordeal with everything you've been through, what is something you've kind of learned and appreciated about your mom?
Okay. She sacrificed so much for me. Like, she's become my 24/7 caregiver. And when the accident first happened and she had to move to Miami, her busy season was January to May, and the accident happened February 19th, so I was in the ICU for a lot of that, or the hospital. I didn't get out until last few days after Mother's Day. So she missed her whole busy season to take care of me, and she has never complained. So to date, her optimism to me. thing.
Yeah, that's a sacrifice. That's the sacrifice of a mother. Obviously, Mom, you can answer the same question as far as her. What have you learned with her being your daughter and going through all this?
Well, I mean, I have a really deep. This has been such a deep, important part of my life, and I think part of my strength is my deep level of spirituality that really surfaced. And I'm not talking about organized religion. I'm talking about
right.
the spirituality.
Yeah.
And so for me, my experience throughout all this was to, ironically enough, get a level of awareness that I had not had before, that I equate to that moment when you're walking outside and you take one step and all of a sudden there's a huge spider web that's brilliant and gorgeous and beautiful that one step earlier you did not see. And it helped me become grateful for a lot of the really painful things that had occurred in my life before. It helped me even forgive a lot of those things. And what I have come to believe is Schuyler and I are so aligned on so many things. And Sky, when this boulder hit, she was 22 years old. She had already positively impacted the world by the age of 22 in a way that very few people impact the world even by the time they're 80. So she had been to 5 out of the 7 continents. She had taught English to monks in Nepal. She had been on stages. She had helped to build a school. She had done all sorts of things. And yet, to most people from the outside, here was this 22-year-old smiling, pretty Yale girl. Of course I would be positive if I went to Yale and I traveled the world. And, what can this girl, how much faith can I put into this girl? The fact that now she has had all of that pre-planning really, to a certain extent, taken from her. Her future does not, as she mentions now, does not look at all like she had kind of laid it out in her senior year at Yale, what she thought it was going to look like. It doesn't look at all like that. And yet she is still out there happy and inspiring people. And I believe that those of us who have these traumatic experiences in our lives, and what works for me is to believe that even that is part of this big kind of ask, and it is given. I believe that, again, this is my spirituality talking here, but I believe that before we actually come onto this planet, that we do at a very deep, profound level, sort of have a purpose. And when that purpose is really big, the understanding is that it is going to take some fire for this diamond. And that fire is so intense that we would never in our human form be able to consciously subject ourselves to that. And therefore, we have these moments that really throw us into the fire. And that is our opportunity to emerge as ultimately being supersized, per se, and able to really get out there and have the opportunity, if we still choose to accept it, per se, to go out there and live as that bigger, bolder version of ourselves. But it doesn't happen on autopilot. It does not happen when you believe that you are doomed to live with this, your own worst enemy at your side every single day. There comes a time when I believe that we, whatever it takes, have to say, am I going to be the sovereign of my own responses versus just this reactionary creature who kind of ends up looking back on life wondering if I ever lived? And that has nothing to do with our circumstances, because I believe the anti-mentor circumstances and people in our lives also have the opportunity to give us a profound gift. And this boulder certainly has been one of those anti-mentor experiences for us. And so did I have a moment where I totally, quote unquote, crashed? No, I didn't, believe it or not. I mean, do I grieve that Sky isn't going to, hasn't been able to do some of the things yet that she wanted to do? Yes. And yet at the same time, there is no question in my mind that this girl, this young woman, is on track to do something so aligned with what will be ultimately her vision, that the day will come when she looks back and realizes that she hasn't lived a quote unquote ordinary life, but who wants to be ordinary anyway. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I know I don't. I like that you tap into you talked a lot about like being spiritual, because I had this conversation with a friend of mine the other day weirdly enough, on a treadmill, and we were kind of talking about, God and spiritualism and all that, and he's one that's very agnostic and doesn't believe in anything, and you can kind of tell it by his soul, because he's just like, I don't know, he's just, sometimes, as they say, he's kind of like a drip. I love him, but he's just kind of very negative. And I was trying to explain to him, because he was just like, there is no such thing and any of this. And I'm like, look, man, I don't have all the answers. I don't pretend to have all the answers. I rarely ever go to church. But I'm telling you, there are things in my life that are unexplainable that I can't tell you why this happened. I can't tell you, it's not just a coincidence. There are things that, like, I've heard things, like, just, I'm not saying I've talked to voices or anything, but there's just like a little feeling you get, and you're like, oh, okay, I should just go in this direction. And I'm like, you gotta believe in something, because it doesn't have to be God, doesn't have to be it just finds something to grasp onto, because life is gonna suck for you, because you're not gonna go anywhere. You don't believe in anything. And then, like, and he focuses so much, like, oh, well, when death comes, and I'm like, man, you're going to miss the boat, because you're going to focus your whole trip in life of just focusing on when this shit ends. And at the end of the day, like, you may live to 90, but you're going to get to 90 and be like, oh, now I'm dying. This isn't even that bad. I could have just lived 90 more years of my life. I could have lived those first 90, like it was all my best life. And you focus so much on that. And I'm like, trust me, I struggle with the God thing all the time. I do believe there is something. But I also know that, like I said, there's just stuff beyond, as they say, it's above my pay grade. Like, it's something that's beyond my knowledge, and something I could probably never be able to learn until whenever that day comes. But you have to grasp onto things, because when traumatic things arise, like with your daughter or with my health or whatever, like, you got to know how to deal with it. Even if you're not instilled with any of those qualities, you don't have any of the tools to do it. Like, you just have to go based on instinct. And you got to grasp onto something, and whatever is talking to you, whatever's giving you these little projections, these little, maybe just like a little image just shows up in the back of your head, like, oh, okay, so I should go that way. All right, cool. Oh, okay, I should do that. It's something that's unexplainable. It's not, you can't just go, well, that was just a coincidence, or that. Like, the coincidence is a thing, but there are some things where you just go, nah, man, like, something has been standing over me for a long time in my life. Whether I wanted to admit it or acknowledge it, that was up to me. But I've always noticed something, and I've always felt like there was a purpose. And weirdly, the irony of this whole thing is, I never wanted to talk. I never wanted to be a leader. I never cared. I cared about people, but I never cared about being a person that, like, takes the leadership role and go, hey guys, let's go this direction. I would rather just be the person that just waited for that person to do that. And here I am. And so, and with all the advocacy and the other things I do, it's like, how the hell did I get here? Because none of this was I never saw this, for coming from me, because I was a petrified kid of my own life. Most of my life, that's why I didn't experience a lot of things when I was young, because I stayed hidden, because I didn't, and I wanted, and not even just hidden, like being visible, but also just, if I had friends, I wanted to keep them by being like them. I didn't want to be my own individual. And so, yeah, it's.
I have a random different question.
Sure.
Whenever you're out to eat or something or with other people, do other people talk to the other person about you like you're not there?
Oh, yeah. You know what? I wasn't going to cut you off, but I immediately knew where you were going with that. Yes, I haven't dealt with that in a long time, because I've just been very assertive. But there was a period of time I leaned into that. And my mom, my grandma, whoever would do it, and they would go, "Yeah, what would TJ like to eat?" Well, I mean, they wouldn't say my name, but what would he like to eat? And I, I'll be honest with you, I sat there and went with it until a point I realized it was stupid, and I'm like, I'm becoming however old I was. I mean, I'm 23 or whatever I was at the time. I'm like, I can't let this happen anymore, because they're always gonna see me as that person's child, and I'm less than, and. So you have to, but you also have to have that conversation with, like, let's say my mom. I had to go, "Mom, you cannot know." If they ask you that question, the only thing you can say is, "I don't know, ask him." Because other than that, you can't answer for me like this anymore, because this is just neutering me. So no,
yeah, it's so funny. Logically, you think about it. Like, not being able to walk has no effect on you being able to talk. So I don't know what people's rationale is.
Well, look at you. Like, you could just say, "Look, I went to Yale." Like, it had a boulder that had to take me out. But at the end of the day, I went to Yale. Like, you work at Red Lobster. Why are you talking to me this way? Like, no offense to Red Lobster if you want to be a sponsor someday, but actually no, I wouldn't want them, because I don't like how they treat the lobsters. But anyway, and at the end of the day, it's like, you got to stand up for yourself, and someone can't just. People look at us like and I can only imagine it's exacerbated times 100 with you because of the way you speak and things. But I mean, we all get it. We all get pushed into this, he must be slow, or she must be, and it's like, no, man, you don't understand. Like, my life's already hard, and that's why I talk about the disability as a whole, because I'll say this at every episode if I have to. The hardest part about having a disability is everything else. The disability is the easiest part in a way, because everything. I mean, it's so hard for us to get jobs and go to the right schools and to make friends and to date and just be out in the world and be treated fairly and get equal opportunity. We don't get it. Yeah. And we're the last.
People don't understand the difference between that physical disability and the mental disability.
Well, yeah, and there's so many variants of us. There's so many different versions of. I mean, I know so many people with traumatic brain injuries, and they all have different issues. I know so many people with blindness, and they have so many different issues. And beyond, they're just also different people. But yeah, I mean, and then you take that into consideration. Look at all the different types of people that are like us and are into this category of disability. It's not like black, gay, or women. Like, not that they're not different, but for the most part, they share a lot of similar qualities. Whereas in disability, black, gay, women, all that's in there. But also, there's all these different types of, accessible things that we need different things for us. And you could find a person just like you that went through the exact same thing, and they might use different accessible tools to get through life than you. So you kind of have to go case by case. But that's why I'm so big on us, sticking together. Like, I have something to do on Wednesday, which is Disability Pride Day, May 1st, and we're going down to the Capitol, and we're going to do the Capitol crawl, where we go up the steps. And
oh, that's so cool. Yeah. I watched a film about how they got the ADA started because they did that. And, like, I don't know.
Well, it
Some
started.
of us can't.
It started because a lot of people who are in wheelchairs couldn't get up the steps, so they found a way to get
Yeah,
up there, and so now I'm gonna do the crawl with a bunch of other people,
that's cool.
because
Good to know that it's Disability Awareness Day on May 1st.
yeah, we have to, and that's why I created this and why we're talking. Like, I just want us to be together, and at some point we could all get away from each other and go, look, I'm Schuyler, and I have this, and this is my thing, but we have to be a stronger unit because we don't support each other enough in this community, and I mean the disability community. And I think if we can just support each other, give a crap about each other, and want better things for all of us, I think we'll be fine. But we try to find ways to act like we're not a part of the community, or we try to push people out, and it's really unfortunate. But there are a lot of us out here who are trying to make a difference so that the next generation of Schuyler's, don't have to try as hard to live their life. Life will be easier, hopefully. Hopefully, yeah. It's all about doing it, though. It's all about putting in the time and the effort. Like what your mom did for you, we all have to go as hard or harder because we have to make a difference. Otherwise, we're just going to stay stagnant and we're going to be in the same spot for eternity. And
At least it's gotten better because I know that at the wheelchair pageant, one of the speakers was Miss Wheelchair 2008, and her accident happened before the ADA was established, and her boyfriend, who's now her husband, had to pick her up and take her up the stairs, but there were stairs to get into the restaurant.
Are you talking about Judith Heumann?
No, I don't know that's her name.
Okay, because I'm going to say she's like the biggest known disability advocate. Unfortunately, she just died, but...
Okay, yeah, that's her.
Yeah, okay.
I can't remember her name.
Okay, that's okay. No worries.
Sorry.
No, you're fine. No worries. I mean, I'm full of snot, so I can't remember anything anyway. So, but yeah, Mom, what was the reasoning behind the book? I mean, more than
so it was interesting. So that first book was really an accident, pardon the pun, but so as part of me really deciding to play a mean inner game to help Schuyler based on everything that I'd studied for decades, it meant that not only could I be playing a strong inner game, but if I really wanted to kind of turbocharge her, that the energy around her, that meant that the people that were around the world, they couldn't be expecting her to die any moment either. I had to try to influence the energy that they were giving out as well, which meant that the kind of things that I published on Facebook, now remember there were people all over the world, so that was the best way to connect with people, to keep them updated. It was leaning into this inner game. So it wasn't the normal picture of her in the ICU suffering. It wasn't the normal, oh my gosh, Schuyler is fighting for her life. Please pray for my daughter. There was none of that. It was, look, pictures of her at her best, at her strongest, at her most vibrant, happiest. And then it was, if you want to root for Schuyler, then you go out there and you do the things that you have considered to be impossible. You go out, live your dreams. You go out, smile and laugh and talk to the people in the elevator, whatever that looks like. You go out and you discover that inner sky within yourself and believe that it has no limits. So at first, as I mentioned, I confess, I thought a lot of people would read this and think, oh my God, this mom is so detached from reality. Ironically enough, it really resonated with people. And so rather than it just being like 100 people around the world that I thought I was updating, people started sharing it like crazy. So we got to the point where we had thousands of people who were following it. Many people who didn't know Schuyler didn't know me. And it started getting to the point where people would recognize us after we got back to Tampa, where we live. And so one of these times I was out and about, and someone recognized me, came up to me and said, "When are you going to take those posts and put them into a book?" And I kind of laughed, saying, "Why would you want them in a book? They're on Facebook." And she said, "Well, time is passing, and I have some people who would really benefit from what you wrote, who aren't on Facebook and don't want to be on Facebook." So I literally went home that night and kind of scratched my head and went, never thought about a book, but I wonder if it could help people, because by now I'm hearing all these stories of how what I had written about our experience was really profoundly impacting people, which blew me away, but made me feel like, okay, this is a way I can kind of pay it forward. And so I did a little bit of research, reached out to, an artist on Fiverr, and with a design that I wanted for the cover. Within 24 hours, I had that back. I added an opening chapter and an ending chapter, and then literally took, without editing, all the posts from the first 4 months and put them in this book. And several weeks later, The Sky is the Limit went live on Amazon and hit one of the hot new releases. So, wow. It was wild. And, I continue to be humbled by how many people take the time to reach out and say, "Oh my gosh, I've been estranged from my family for years and years and years. And after reading your book, I've reconnected with them." Families who, had a child who was suicidal, who hadn't said, "I love you," in years and years and years. They kind of read the book together, and their child said, "I love you," for the first time. People who, had a family member disappear in the tsunami years and years ago, the Christmas Eve tsunami, had a sibling, disappear, and had a real tough time coming to grips with it, had finally started getting some peace. I mean, just you name it, products, people launching their dream product that they hadn't had the courage to do. And it just, to me, reinforces the power of our story. And it was interesting that you talked about your friend, you're going to miss the boat. One of the things that I've really come to believe is that we can't miss the boat, because we are the boat, but we do have to learn how to captain it, and how gently we go over the waves really depends on the ownership that we take in learning how to captain that boat. Because if we are going to allow the waves of the ocean to dictate how we experience the ocean, then we're in for a tough ride. And there does come a moment when we get to choose, and that choice is always there in every experience. Are we going to accept in the same way? I mean, I talk about this in the context of our technology. Would you ever take your password protection or your virus protection off of your technology? Of course you wouldn't. Why? Because you realize there are things out there that can make the system fail. And why then do we not give ourselves the same authority to do that with our most valuable resource of all? And that is our mind and our identity of who we are. And so that really is one thing that I have come to believe very emphatically, as you can tell, is that this is not just a grand adventure into the casino of life where we hope that the house will let us win. This is really something that we have to take deliberate, intentional ownership of our experience, and more importantly, what we focus on and what we make it mean. Not just, again, be this reactionary, well, is it going to be one of those days? There is no such thing as one of those days unless you allow that to happen. And, you know, there may be moments that really suck. There always are. There are things out there that can, you know, terrify us if we let it. And yet it's our responsibility to ultimately be the sovereign and say, you know, thanks for sharing. That thought goes in the quarantine right now. You're not getting in because you do not empower me. You do not crescendo me forward. And this is my freaking life. And I have one goal, and that's to be taking my last breath, whenever that is, saying, oh my God, this was freaking epic. I hope I get to do it again. And everything, you know, along the way is just kind of, as they call in the film industry, just atmosphere.
Yeah. No, and I fully agree. I mean, there's things that I've been instilled with throughout my journey, and I didn't know what they were for. It's like I've said this before, like, it's like playing a video game and you come across the key. And you're like, all right, cool, I'll try to put it in this door. Oh, that doesn't work. Oh, okay, so this key doesn't, like, I can't use this key on this level? No, it's a key for later in the game. It's like, oh, well, that's weird to get it on this level. You figured it'd be for the level where I can actually open the door. All right. And so you just keep getting these, you know, you just keep coming across these keys, and you stockpile them, and you know, and you start to accumulate more and more keys, and you're like, I don't know what any of these go to. And then little by little, a couple doors start opening. You're like, oh, okay, that lock looks like the same key. You know, the hole looks like that key would fit. All right, let me try. Oh, look, it opens up. And then little by little, you start getting rid of those keys, and you start realizing what you're where you're headed, and the doors start opening up. And like I said, the same thing if you look at them as like tools. You have these things, you just don't know what they go for when you're actually going to be able to use them. But when you do, it's pretty awesome, because you're like, man, I had that the whole time. I remember I learned that was a tool my third grade teacher instilled me with. Oh man, I never thought I would ever like use a lesson from my third grade teacher, but that worked for this particular incident. And like I said, there are things that you just have, you just don't know. Some things are just, you know, you're born with them and you just have them. There's certain qualities that you just, you know, it's just life taught you, and whatever, maybe it's passed down from someone in your family, but they're there, and for good. I mean, there's some bad things too that are in there that you find out later on in life where you're like, oh God, that sounds like my uncle. But overall, it's like, yeah, you have to really look at the landscape of your journey and realize like where you came from, because sometimes we focus so much on where we're not, and how far we've gotten in the past whatever month, week, day, even year or two. But we never look at, like, you know, I always look at it like steps. It's like you look at it where it's like the steps go all the way up, and it's almost like, you know, like a giant glacier. It's like, well, how the hell am I getting up Mount Everest? I haven't. But then if you look behind you and look how far you've actually climbed, yeah, it may not be halfway yet, or it may not be at the top, but you are 30% there, 40% there, and that's still better than just, you know, letting go of the rope and falling back to the bottom. So, do
you want to hear one of my favorite quotes?
Sure.
Inch by inch, it's a sin, but your yard is hard.
Okay. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And like I said, I mean, I think that's something. I think people with disabilities, we focus so much on our comparisons to able-bodied people. Like, oh man, but I have an apartment, but so do they, and I, you know, and it's like, yeah, but their whole family has places to live. Their whole family can drive. Their whole family can do it. But it's like, look at all that you have gotten through with all the barriers, and look where you are today. And if you look at the trail behind you, look how long that trail is. It's like I said, it's maybe not as long as the journey ahead, but like I said, it's better than just giving up and going back to the bottom and starting over, because that's the worst thing in the world, when you hit rock bottom, and especially if you've already been there and it's familiar to you. It's like, oh God, we're here again, and I got to start all over. No, it's not fun. So you got to believe.
Yeah, I know. We shouldn't compare ourselves to able-bodied people.
Or anybody.
But that's hard.
Yeah, or anybody for that matter. Like, I shouldn't compare myself to you. But it is hard because they are the ones that created all the rules, and you know they're the ones that when we interact with more of them than we do ourselves, meaning people with disabilities. So it's like it's hard not to, because we want a lot of the things that they have. It's like, I want to live, I want to date, I want to go to school, I want to work, and I want to be able to live an affluent life and just be happy. But the problem is like, it's going to be harder for you. So if you compare yourself to your siblings or whatever, the neighbor girl, you're going to always come up short. You're always going to fail because they don't have it as easy. They don't have it as hard as you. And
well, I think this is where, you know, we all, and this applies to able-bodied as well as, you know, those who have a quote unquote a disability. I mean, I think that lots of able-bodied people have disabilities. I think they just aren't visible a lot of times. Yeah. But I think that this is where sometimes we have to, almost like your video game analogy, we have to let go of the same old questions. Why can't I do that? Why can't I do that this way? At some point, we have to let go of that question because we realize kind of how is that working out for you? And maybe the question, maybe we're all here with to answer different questions. And I think that one of the advantages of the disabled, physically disabled community is that there is no more powerful example of how well a community works when it's working together than the disability community. We go over to Orlando, to Altamont Springs, to this wonderful organization called Next Step Orlando that specializes totally in spinal cord injury, stroke, and traumatic brain injury. And the physical therapy, of course, is amazing and has really been helping Schuyler, but it's more the community. And so to realize that perhaps part of the opportunity for us individually is to realize that whether it's in business or personally, we often achieve things that previously felt impossible, not when we're trying to do it on our own as an island, but in the context of a group of individuals who all have their own unique brilliances. So when we can form a community, we even know a couple at Next Step who met each other at Next Step through Next Step and are now married, and they you know, their home has been adapted so that they can live and function. And so I think sometimes when we get to that place where things feel really bleak, that, you know, pain is a powerful teacher, as you know, and sometimes the huge ask of the pain is, you know, what are you assuming that is not necessarily true? And often that assumption is that there's only one variation of truth. And I think that when, just like you're about to do on May 1st, that reinforcement of the power of community to make things happen. And sometimes it's to be the leading edge example of what's possible, that forces people to ask questions that they never thought to ask before. That can be part of, you know, the process of what you're here to accomplish and achieve and leave your legacy on the world.
Yeah, you got to leave something behind, and there's a lot of value in that. And I think, like I said, just the whole comparison with able-bodied people, I always wanted to just kind of get rid of that because it's setting you up for failure. And you're right, like a lot of them do have their own issues and disabilities, but it's like and like I said, a lot of it's on our own. Like we are always in comparison because there's more of them, and we have to get over that. Because again, you're right. We don't know what they're going through, but also it's like it's just an unfair comparison. And if you were a person who doesn't have legs and you're like, but I want to run a marathon, I want to run like they do. Well, you can't. You can do it. You just have to find an alternate way. And that's what makes disability, like people with, disabilities are so powerful, because people will just get a prosthetic leg and do it. But if you sit around and figure out how you're going to grow your legs back, that's not going to happen. But you got to find a whole alternate route, and it is possible. Like, I know someone who doesn't have arms or legs and they drive. It's amazing. And that's just, and to me, that's why when I even asked you, like, what you learned from Schuyler, it's because you're around these people, you're around people like us, and we're like, well, like if you're willing, if you're empathetic and you're willing to learn and understand us, you'll definitely be inspired, because there's a lot of us who will just do things that to us, it's our normal day life, just doing whatever it is that we're doing. But you're like, how do you do that? Like, I only know my one way. Like, how the hell do you, like, if you had no arms, how do you make breakfast? How do you wash yourself? How do you do it? Like, and people do it. And there's so much you can learn from us, because there are a lot of things that we instinctively just do, and it's just our reactive bodies just doing what we do. Like, I always talk about how, like, dolphins used to, be out on land, and then all of a sudden water and the oceans, started to surround them, and they were like, oh, I guess I need to grow fins and start swimming. and it's
I didn't know that.
Yeah, many years ago. But it's like, okay, great. Okay, so how are these dolphins going to live now? They can't swim. Well, now they can. They've adapted. And you just keep adapting to life. And it's, it's, you just got to make your own legacy, be your own person. And, because I get all the time, like, oh, you don't act or look.
Yeah, it was like, if there's a will, there's a way.
Right. I will ask you, Schuyler, because we can wrap this up here. And this is something I've talked about a lot. What, beyond just your family, what are, because I know you have dogs, what are animals like for a person with a disability? Because to me, they're everything.
Yeah, I don't know if this is what you mean, but I volunteer at the Humane Society, and dogs really like me because I'm naturally on their level.
Okay.
So I feel like dogs are always running towards me.
Right. I meant more like the animals you have at home, because, like, for me, my cats and other, no, you're fine. Other animals, like, just because they're so loving and empathetic, and they're non-judgmental. And they become your best friend, because they're there at all times, and when you're sick, and they can feel your emotion, and so it's easy to just confide in them and be,
definitely,
and be yourself and let your guard down, because they don't care.
It's crazy. One of my dogs knew me before the accident, so I wonder what she thinks now that I'm in the wheelchair. The other two.
I don't know.
Only have known me in a wheelchair, so I think, are easy. But they're all really loving, and I love that.
Yeah, for sure. All right, girls. You guys want to promote whatever it is you want to promote, so we can get you girls some more listens and.
Well, sure. Yeah. I mean, I would, of course, just encourage anyone who is curious about, our story to pick up The Sky is the Limit on, on Amazon. And of course, you can follow Sky's progress actually on Facebook. Sky is the Limit, but on Facebook, it's spelled like her name, Schui. So Sky is the Limit. You can follow me. I'm Meridith Alexander with 2 I's, Meridith. But if you are someone who feels like you would really benefit with some work on what I call the inner game of really helping yourself feel like you are ready to take ownership of the thoughts that go through in your mind and really get some some ideas of how to get beyond that, then I would definitely invite you to hop on a call with me. 15, 20 minutes, and I can really brainstorm with you and help to give you some clarity, because it literally is something that I studied for 30 plus years without realizing until that boulder fell how incredibly important it is, whether it's personally or professionally. And I would invite you to do that simply by going to my website, which is gritmindsetacademy.com, and you'll see a place where you can set up that call. Or you can go to bit.ly/go epic now. You capitalize all three of those words. So bit.ly/go epic now, and set that up, because like I said, that is part of my paying it forward. It's what I do full time now, other than speaking on stages, is really help people come even more alive, whatever that means to you. So, and then of course I would subscribe to this podcast if you aren't already, because clearly what you're doing is so valuable. And I just can't emphasize how important community really is. And it is often the one thing on that really dark day that you can gift yourself that will make a profound difference in how you crawl into bed at night.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of times where I'm soul searching and just looking at myself in the proverbial mirror and going, all right, whatever I did today, can I sleep with myself? Because at the end of the day, I have to live with everything I do. And there's times I've pushed the envelope and got myself in trouble because I fought for myself maybe too much. I don't know. But at the end of the day, it's like, did you fight? Because if you don't fight, it's like the worst thing to do is to do nothing. So it's like, did you fight for yourself? Yeah. All right. Did you go a little overboard? Yeah. But at the end of the day, how would you have felt if you just sat there and took it and didn't explain yourself and didn't fight for those who needed it? Much worse. Okay, cool. And so, yeah, no, I appreciate you very much. And I love what you girls are doing. It's awesome. I love the bond you two have. And, it's amazing. And it's like, that's for me, it's just, like I said, this is just supposed to be a safe place for people just to be themselves and, you know, tell their stories without any judgment. And, you know, I love that it exists, because I remember when I was a child that there wasn't a thing, not just even podcasts, but just, it wasn't, I didn't have a place to go. I had to, you know, commiserate with other people who were, you know, down in the dumps and struggling, but there wasn't a place for me to just go and be myself and know I wouldn't be judged. So the more we create, the better it is for the future versions of ourselves. So we're gonna wrap this up. Don't hang up, because I just want to finish talking to you after. But Sky, you want to end us out?
Sure. What do I say?
Just say goodbye to everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Okay. All right, guys, we are getting out of here. I am Stuffy, McStuffykins here. And it's like, I feel relatively fine, and I'm just miserable, because like it's all just like my whole like sinus system, septum and everything is just clogged. It's infuriating. I've coughed and sneezed. Actually, I think I'm done sneezing, but I was sneezing yesterday. But just the allergies are beating me to a pulp right now. It's not fun. I hope you guys are having a better one than me, even though I did really thoroughly enjoy this episode. Excuse me. But we're going to get out of here. I got some other things to do, but we're still staying strong and going at it. Continuing this journey with me, guys, and we'll see where we end up. All right, y'all. I'll see y'all next week. Bye.